reflecting on the numbers, 2,100. So it's true, I was one of the original people who signed up, and it was because Fran Palmer was in a program, a NOAA program at the university for 2 years. And she just walked in my office and explained what they were doing back in Washington in setting up the NWS, and I said, sign me up. So it's really, really amazing to see how this organization has grown. Anyway, we're living in interesting times, right? So let's get into it. In joining the National Weather Service in 1989, I left the research community, a community that I was proud to be part of, and to join an organization which had a mission I believed in, and an ongoing modernization that I wanted to be part of. What I quickly learned was that I joined an organization whose entire workforce demonstrated an amazing commitment to service and a dedication to the mission of saving lives and property. And I also saw firsthand the scientific and engineering integrity that the National Weather Service workforce brings to their job every day, especially as it relates to sustaining the scientific integrity of the forecast process. 24 years later, when I took the job as the director of the National Weather Service, I did so with an unshakable commitment to our mission, and because of the dedication of our people who make this a great agency. And I also took this job because of the accepted strategic vision of building a weather-ready nation, which I believed was essential to up our game, to go beyond forecasts and warnings, to link our forecasts and warnings to decision makers at every government level. I wanted to lead this fundamental change in the way the National Weather Service operates to ensure every community is ready, responsive, resilient in the face of the increasing vulnerability of this country to extreme weather, water, and climate events. What I can say today is that the employees of the National Weather Service have exceeded my wildest expectations for where that vision has taken us. So today, the National Weather Service embraces the Weather Ready Nation vision, embraces impact-based decision support services, and uses what we call IDSS to connect observations, forecasts, and warnings to decision makers at every government level, including tribal governments, Pacific territorial islands, Alaskan natives, recognizing that over 90% of decisions that directly relate to public safety are made at the local level. And we have adopted the practice, practice, practice mantra to build up the trust between the National Weather Service and our core emergency management partners, a trust that is essential to ensure our partners are ready and responsive. Ready because we have practiced with them, and responsive because they believe in what we do. When using our information, and even able to factor in the forecast uncertainty into their risk assessment and decision matrix. And today, the local, state, federal emergency management community trusts us enough to do their job of saving lives and mitigating property loss, even in the face of forecast uncertainty that we are still confronting. What I observe now, especially from the morning stand-ups and from the interactions at emergency management conferences, is that the field is leading the way and carrying us all forward toward what has become their goal of building a weather-ready nation. And as we move forward, the National Weather Service is finding efficiencies in the forecast process while maintaining that scientific integrity, adopting a whole office concept for everyone in the forecast office to find their role in this effort, to belong to achieving that mission, and collaborating across all forecast offices and centers to ensure consistency that our core partners demand as they make their decisions to take the actions that save lives. The success of this effort is seen in the statement by Eric Boggy, Director of Emergency Management of Hennepin County, Minnesota. Quote, "Partnership with the National Weather Service has revolutionized the emergency management community from one that reacts to events to one that proactively prepares and stays ahead of extreme events. We now see this every day across the country, whether it's the fires in California, severe weather outbreaks, such as what occurred in Kansas and Ohio in May of this year, the January 2016 blizzard in the Northeast that Paul and I geeked over for 36 hours straight as we were snowbound in our homes. Flooding events, hurricanes over the past several years really stand out. And get this, we are seeing that ocean shipping lanes are now completely vacated in the predicted path of an incoming hurricane. Lessons learned from the El Faro incident. And we see it in testimonials like the one from Mike Cruz, the Christian County Emergency Manager and Taylorville, Illinois Fire Chief. On December 1st, 2018, a long-planned evening Christmas parade in Taylorville was canceled in the morning due to a severe weather threat forecast for late that afternoon. As the evening approached, the EF3 tornado ripped through the town center where the parade would have been occurring. Mike Cruz later wrote, quote, "To be clear, my decisions were heavily based on the conversations I had with the National Weather Service Central Illinois office leading up to that storm impact. Having the National Weather Service staff readily available to discuss the likely impact and timeline was crucial. In my view, the entire decision support program you have long promoted worked flawlessly. It is clear from all the positive feedback we have received since the December 1st tornado event that other emergency managers, elected officials, media, and the community at large share that belief." So now let's talk about Dorian. And Paul, you took the slides. He always did this to me. Okay, and which one do you
The big green arrow button.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is Dorian. Dan Lindsay provided this. You can see it's stalling, unprecedented. But look how close it is to Florida for about 30, almost 36 hours. All right? No evacuations going on during that period. Miami Airport kept open. You understand the implications of that? And then it rips up the coast. All right? So that's that was our life almost 2 weeks. And by the way, when this storm was developing, let's see if we get to that. Yep, the big green button.
It's arrow.
This one.
Yeah. Nope, to the left.
Yep. Okay, got it.
Yep.
So, might have to hit on that one again to get that moving. There we go. So this is the official forecast. Note we had a problem early on with Puerto Rico. Talk about forecast uncertainty. Then it slowed up and stopped. But from this point on, it was amazing how that red dot is following the official forecast. All right? So during the initial period of the storm, yes, clearly a lot of forecast uncertainty and nervousness from that point forward because of the types of forecast issues we were facing. So in some respects, this storm didn't behave well. Okay, we can go to the next slide. This is once the storm started moving again, or just before it started moving again, we were predicting when it would start moving. Notice the narrowness of those counties in which evacuations were ordered. If we can step through the next two slides, please. And then we follow that on up. Okay? This is absolutely amazing. And I'm saying that because I happen to have lived through Floyd as the director of NSAP in 1999. So if we go to the comparison with Floyd, there's Floyd and there's the track. Now what's interesting about this track is that it was predicted. We actually predicted that turn. Nobody believed it. Nobody believed the forecast. Now the Hurricane Center will tell you that they have been doing impact-based decision support services before it was called impact-based decision support services. And it's true that they interacted with emergency management communities. didn't practice with it, but there was a training that was done every summer. They did not believe or have the confidence in the forecast. So this is what happened next. The hurricane path resulted in evacuation of nearly 3 million people from coastal areas of Florida, Georgia, and the Carolinas. At the time, it was called the largest peacetime evacuation in the history of the United States. But it's worse than that. Go to the next slide. That's what you had on all the highways. The evacuation, people just left all at the same time. No coordinated, stepwise procedures. And remember, the decisions in this country that affect public safety are principally made at the local level. It extends all the way back from the initial founding of this country. So they all just released, no coordination. That's what we were left with. This huge flight from the coast. President Clinton was in China. He came rushing back because of the impending disaster. There's still this belief that it could hit Florida, it could hit Georgia, eventually hit North Carolina. So the lessons learned in the evacuation aspect, I remember being on CNN at Saturday night after all this, and they tried to actually pit the National Weather Service against the emergency management community with a live interview on CNN, and I refused to do that. All right? That's where we were with Floyd. We know what can happen when we don't have this focus on the last mile that cuts across the whole spectrum of decision makers. Next slide. So we have this, the Tampa Bay Times, Hurricane Dorian forecasting shows how models have improved since Floyd in 1999. Now, if you really want to get me angry, watch me during these events where the media especially, but my friends, my colleagues, the ones I truly respect, debate the Euro versus the GFS while the event is going on. Not helpful. And in many ways, not relevant, as we see, in terms of the interactions that go on between the forecast offices and the emergency management communities that are actually making these decisions. And our collaborative aspect has been enriched by our interactions with all our partners through chat sessions to ensure we're on the same song page. And it's not just one way. We don't have all the answers. All right? So there's an incredible range of activities behind the scene that contribute to the forecast evacuations for Dorian. There were hundreds. I wanted to say 1,000 at least, but they're still doing the counts. Hundreds of collaboration calls within the National Weather Service forecast offices and national centers, many led by the National Hurricane Center. And again, it wasn't a one-way call. The National Weather Service staff was surged from across the National Weather Service to offices in the affected areas in the southern and eastern region. About 20 National Weather Service employees were embedded in federal, state, and local emergency offices before and during this event. There were hundreds of chat sessions that included many people inside the National Weather Service and many people, external partners in the media and the emergency management community, which were held throughout the event before forecasts and warnings were issued or updated to make for more consistent messaging to public safety officials within affected areas. Launching extra SONs from stations throughout the eastern third of the country and all the way up into Canada that appears to have stabilized the model predictions after August 31st. That's a hypothesis, okay? We've archived all the data. For those in the research community who want to do the with and without, go right ahead. We've done it for some of these past cases, and they do make an impact. And it's the soundings that capture what's going on in the extratropical stream that may or may not pick up that hurricane. Okay, so it's not just what's going on around the storm, it's a wide area that's influencing the ultimate path of that storm. So we did that. And we're keeping the infrastructure robust before, during, and after the event. The tracking of critical information every day to sustain, this is our goal, 99.99% reliability of our communication, central computing, and observation infrastructure. An interesting story here is that we were running the Orlando computer as our primary computer for all our models, and using our own information, we made sure everything was switched over to Reston. And it was a glitch, right? There was one of these bad cards, and we took care of that on the Friday night before this hurricane started really having influence approaching Florida. So all of this was going on. All of this was going on. And all our forecast office were collaborating internally to ensure the best National Weather Service forecast was provided to the emergency management communities in the eastern third of the United States. We are already hearing testimonials up and down the East Coast where they had to evacuate and take action. And we're also hearing testimonials further inland where they didn't. So let's talk about Birmingham. First, some background. So on March 3rd, the Birmingham WFO County Warning Area experienced a vicious tornado outbreak. Despite the model forecast and efforts by the Storm Prediction Center, the WFOs, and the state and local emergency management offices, and despite extended range severe weather outlooks and great watch verifications and extended warning lead times, 23 people died. Two things to keep in mind for the March 3rd case. One, the MIC Chris Darden and the Sioux Kevin Laws accompanied the first responders into the rural areas hardest hit. They saw the carnage and were deeply impacted as anyone could be. Two, the day after, on March 4th, Eddie Hicks and other Alabama emergency managers stopped at the National Weather Service headquarters on their way to the Hill to see how we conduct our morning stand-up, and then to meet with the National Weather Service leadership team. Their first comment to us at the meeting was the Birmingham office did everything right. Everything they could have done was done. By mid-morning on March 4th, Southern Region Headquarters and John Murphy, the National Weather Service Chief Operating Officer, were telling us that the office was devastated, and the employees were very hard on themselves, that they had replayed the event over and over, looking for any extra insight that would have increased the warning lead time, anything that may have made a difference. On March 23rd, I paid the Birmingham office a visit, and what I experienced from this office was profound. Their pain was still there, and I got permission to say this from Kevin. Kevin Laws was still racked by this experience and actually cried on my shoulder. They talked about exercising speed in the warning process and to the connection to IDSS. And they talked about this in a way without sacrificing the physical and social science basis for the information they needed to deliver. These call to actions, the type of statements. So let's move forward to Dorian. When the phones and the social media lit up about 10 a.m. Central Time on September 1st, they did what any office would do, with an emphasis they deemed essential to shut down what they thought were rumors. They quickly acted to reassure the partners, the media, and the public with strong language that there was no threat of a tropical storm affecting the state and local communities at that time. And they did that based on past experiences to ensure clarity and impact. They did that with one thing in mind: public safety. And they responded not knowing where this information was coming from. Only later, when the retweets and the politically based comments came into their office, did they learn the sources of this information. Nevertheless, they were correct in clarifying that the threat was very low. Furthermore, the state and local emergency managers and public safety officials made their decisions accordingly and praised their office for quick actions. So let me be clear. The Birmingham office did this to stop public panic, to ensure public safety, the same goal as all the National Weather Service officers were working toward at that time. The system worked as designed and based, in part, on best practices and lessons learned from both physical and social science principles, especially from prior events. The integrity of the forecast process was maintained by the Birmingham office and across the entire National Weather Service, and actually the entire enterprise, including the local media. So, I'd like to close by asking Sue, Kevin Laws, and the Birmingham employees that are present to please stand and be recognized. And this might affect about half of you that were already standing. I would like to ask all the National Weather Service employees in attendance to stand and be recognized for your contributions to prepare our country for this storm and other extreme events. Please stand. I am proud of the National Weather Service employees, and I am honored to serve them as their director. And as a steward of an agency that Joe Friday called the national treasure back in 1998, and still is today. Thank you very much.